Okay, so I think the easiest place to start with this episode is the possum that we saw about 40 minutes ago. We were getting ready to film. I was in the middle of typing an email up, and I saw something crawling in, and I just kind of thought it was something normal. Didn't think it would be anything crazy. I thought maybe like somebody was stepping their foot in, and I looked up, it was a little baby possum. And I was frozen with excitement and wonder that I couldn't say what it was. I was like, Adam, it's
our little studio mascot.
Yeah. And then we spent 10 minutes trying to get it out. So I want to hear from your perspectives on this, and then I'll give my perspective because, well, let me just say this first. I thought you were going to step on it. We'll let you talk about what you were thinking, but Wayne was trying to get it out because the studio door is not far from here. I had a little board that I was trying to guide it out with. And at one point, it got near Wayne, and I think instinct kicked in a little bit because Wayne like swiped at it and then almost stomped on it. So what was the thought process there if we were to Monday morning quarterback this year?
Well, clearly the extra black trash bags did not help the scenario.
That is true.
That was making me worry that the whole nest of possums were under that thing. And Mama Possum is down there somewhere and going to be upset with me.
You can tear your ACL trying to get that thing out of here.
I was going to break down the wall.
I know you camp a lot. I thought you brought it. So it didn't even startle me.
I try to leave those alone, okay?
That's smart.
They do carry disease.
It was a baby.
Well, it was, yeah.
You know,
that
Tarzan
just means Mama somewhere, okay?
Tarzan was a baby,
what I was
and
taught to see, okay?
The gorillas took him, and that worked out all right.
I just wanted to get him out, okay? So we did our best to do that, and it was a moment though.
Did a great job.
Yeah, well.
Meanwhile, I don't even know where you were.
Nearly broke an ankle.
At first I was topping some stuff up, and then I was like, yeah, I'll go check it out.
Okay.
When I got there is when he left, though, so we'll add that.
He must have been like, all right, I know Matt means business.
All right, yeah, this is it.
But, you know, we don't know how they communicate and all that, but we know they have to communicate somehow. What kind of story do you think that possum went back and said, these three people tried to stomp on me?
Did that really happen? They're recording an episode right now.
They tried to preach at me, and I couldn't get out of there soon enough, Mama.
You know, his mom was saying to him, this is why we play dead. I've been telling you for weeks, this is why we play dead. Because I kept expecting it to just flop over and pretend to die.
And I just thought of something. Froze there for just a moment, you know, and I'm like,
I just thought of something. We haven't looked up. They kind of hang, don't they, from trees and stuff?
Oh, no. This is up there. If this were a horror movie, that'd be the jump scare jumping at you.
Do you know your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is running across the... said, don't run away.
We did successfully manage to get the possum out, and to my knowledge, it's safe.
I didn't break an ankle in the process, so
although with
managed.
You know, that possum's luck, it was probably picked up by a bird as soon as it got outside the studio door.
That's possible.
It's certainly a possumal. So yeah, that's got to be the easiest place to start with this. Matt, what do you got?
Well, I got a couple quick ones I can think of. So when I was a kid, my dad was a preacher, and on Sunday nights, a lot of times we would have like a singing service, and the young men would go up and sing a song. And so it was pretty common for a guy to be walking back to his seat, and an older member would say, sing 247, and he would go back up there, not knowing what it was. So one day I had this bright idea. We had that Zionist songbook that had all the American songs in the back of it. And so my buddy has just led some beautiful hymn, and he's coming to sit down, and I say, hey, lead 842. And he's like, okay, 842. And it's America the Beautiful. And so he sits there singing this, not knowing what to do, while the congregation kind of half mutters it. And I just bury my hand in my face crying like this. So that was pretty good.
Yeah.
I felt like the hardest time to keep your composure is when everybody else is, like when you shouldn't be laughing.
Yes.
For me personally.
Yeah.
Another one I thought of this pretty quick is the first time I baptized somebody, I was just so excited about it. I didn't think anything through, and the lady was a little bit bigger than I am, and so when I went to baptize her, she freaked out. Have you guys had this experience before? And put all four limbs up. It felt like I was trying to put a cat into the bathtub. And I had no idea what to do, you know, so we just paused for a minute, and I redid it. But it has really helped me in ministry, because now I tell the person every time, I say, what's going to happen when I go to do this is you're going to freak out a little. And you're going to think I'm about to drown you, and you're going to want to throw an arm up, but we want to get the whole body under. So don't do that. I promise you, I'm going to put you under and bring you right back up. And so because of that, now I've never had anybody else do that. But that first time really helped me. And I was like, what am I supposed to do here? You know, figure it out on the job training.
Yeah. As far as baptism stories, we were at Bible camp one time. This was not me, I promise, but a brother was he was in the pool. He was baptizing this young lady, and they were on the edge of how especially Bible camp pools, they all get a little bit deeper, and then they drop off. Well, he was like right on the edge where it's getting deeper, so it's got a slant. It's probably only maybe a foot and a half, and then it's just a drop. And he's right on the edge. Well, he takes her, confession. He starts to dip her down, and everything, and she doesn't go all the way under. She was a bigger girl, and so that was playing into this situation. But he tries to get her to go under. Well, she doesn't come all the way back up, and she hasn't, her head hasn't come back up out of the water, and he decides, I'm just going to push her on down. And so he literally, with elbow,
oh no,
right in the middle of her chest, and pushes her on down, and she goes, and she's lost all of it. He's knocked the air out of her almost to get her under the water. And then she comes up and she's choking. And of course, the moment, it was my job standing on the side of the pool, I have decided to, the moment she pops back up, we just went along with it as if everything was okay and everything, but we're all just dying. I know. This poor girl couldn't catch her breath. She was choking on water. She had taken it all in,
When it certainly wouldn't help if before that happened, he said, "No, you're about to die in Christ." She's probably thinking, "I didn't know it was literal. I thought it was spiritual." The baptism stories are always
the baptismal steps. Have gotten me probably more times than I care to even talk about.
I walk down them like I'm 80 because I'm so conscious of it.
And I help everyone down like they're 80. Because it's bad, okay? Yeah. And I have taken some people And
it's hard to regain it to the spiritual, impactful, amazing moment it needs to be when something like that happens. It's almost like we got to pause for a minute and start over.
So we were at a funeral recently. It's not normally the place where a lot of funny things happen, but in the baptistry, they have this little cleaning thing that floats along. But because the baptistry is so high up, you can't tell what it is. And so what it looks like is a little bug crawling along the wood of the baptistry on the inside there. And I found out that on the live stream, it looks even weirder because you can see from a higher angle. It just looks like a little pole just swimming along. And they didn't know it was going to be like that when they bought it. But for this entire funeral of this, classmate of mine that had gone on to his reward, I kept just looking at it going, what is that bug crawling on there? And I even went to the preacher afterwards. I said, hey, there's a bug in the baptistry. No, it's not a bug. It's the cleaning thing that goes back and forth through.
We could have given that thing the day off today.
That's what I wanted to say. Hey, they did say this, which was kind of funny. They said, we've discovered it to be a problem. I was like, you think? You think? I mean, I would agree with you there. But I remember at camp, there's always these baptisms that come like one after the other a lot of times. And there was one particular time where I didn't realize I hadn't done many baptisms yet. So you're supposed to have them, plug their nose. Then the smart thing is have them grab their wrist. Then you can hold both of those and make sure that they go down. Well, I just said, hey, plug your nose. And I grabbed his arm that was on there. So I just had him here. So his arm's flopping around like a dead fish. And I noticed that as we're going down. And so I had to, and he's a big, strong, muscular guy. And there's a picture of this on Facebook. If you look on my profile, you can find it. What's not shown in the picture, though, is the oomph that I put into the baptism when I got him into the water mostly. I shoved down so that he would naturally have his arm flop under. And I pulled him back up and he goes, you pushed me.
That was aggressive.
And I said, you had a lot of sin, bro. No,
it's a whole lot of sin,
man. We had to do an extra, oomph to make it happen.
A little extra.
I think that's one of the things that I've noticed Scott now in his class that he teaches at the school. At least he did this last year. I'm sure he might have done it again this year, but he actually called in Evan Manning and showed what to do and not to do with a baptism. I've also heard, if I'm correct, that there is a school of preaching that they actually have them practice it with another student. Like you're going to practice baptizing this guy and then he's going to practice baptizing you so you can get the motion and everything down. Because, outside of preaching the truth and making sure we're looking for lost souls, you really don't want to get home and think, did they get fully under? You want that little haunt to happen to you. So I can certainly understand why there would be a need to do that and talk about that. But baptism stories, I think
we practiced
every
that. We
preacher
have a
has them.
men's group that met in my house for about 3.5 years, and we met at the building one day, and all the men took turns practicing baptizing because I was like, if we're going to talk about being evangelistic and hold each other to that, you guys better be ready.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and get some practice in so you can use it. And it's pretty cool. 3 of the guys in the group, at least 3, maybe more, but I think for sure 3 have baptized somebody since then, and they had never practiced it or anything like that before. So it came in handy,
Yeah, because at church camps, a lot of times someone might say, my boyfriend studied with me. I want him to baptize me. Okay. Have you ever baptized somebody before? No. And then you're over there and they're kind of panicked because this is a big deal. It's probably the most important thing they're ever going to do for somebody else ever. And they're looking at it like, if I don't want to mess this up. So you've got them over in the corner going over step by step. All right, you're going to do this, this, and this, and this. Do you got that? No, repeat it. So you keep going over it. And then it goes off without a hitch or any problem. And it's like, all right, you did it. Great. But, there have been, I'm sure, sometimes where it didn't quite go according to plan. And it is important to do that. It's something you don't necessarily think about, but how many people out there might not be prepared if somebody said they're ready to be baptized to actually do the baptism.
Yeah, I've got another one real quick that I got to add to that. Just recently, a couple of weeks ago, baptized a couple, and they've got a baby that maybe 8 months now, and maybe 7 months anyway. But he does not like to be away from mom or daddy at all. I mean, one of them, if they're not holding him, he is upset, angry, mad. You can't satisfy him at all. And so anyway, and Cindy's been able to maybe, when he's not paying attention to who's actually pushing him in the little stroller or whatever, she can kind of stroll him around the parking lot while we're having a study. But at the moment that he realizes mama's not there, it's, zipping him back in or whatever. And so we have we've had to work through some studies, but anyway, love this family. They are sweet. So the other day they finally decided they were going to be baptized. And so of course, little Charlie's with them. And so we're, this sounds like a joke, but it's really not. But anyway, so little Charlie's with them and, we're trying to work it out. And so I asked the guy, as I typically do with a couple, especially, hey, I'll baptize you. Would you like to baptize your wife? I think that's a very special thing, and they have that connection. It's wonderful. And so, they look at each other, and he's like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. That sounds fine, Well, the secretary was trying to hold the baby for just a moment so that we could baptize him. Well, that wasn't working. So the mom's holding the baby, and we're right there basically at the top of the steps. And so I baptize him. I come up, I swap out, I grab the baby for just a second. I'm literally hanging over so that I could be like 2 feet from mom as she's being baptized, and daddy's right there too, and so I'm like holding him out over the water, and because he doesn't want me at all. And so I'm just like trying to be as close right
Smart
there.
baby.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And he gets it, so he knows what's up. But anyway, so I'm just right there holding the baby, and everything. And he is screaming at the top of his lungs, and at the very same time, I'm having to walk him through and coach him because he's like looking at me, okay, what am I supposed to say next? Okay, what are we doing next? So I'm coaching him, holding the baby. And it was, I was like, just don't drop the baby, whatever you do. We're going to baptize this baby. Anyway, it all worked out. It was fine. But for a moment, man, it was kind of wild,
hairy,
man. Yeah. And because I had my, I'd already gotten wet, so I had 1 foot down in the water and everything, and I'm kind of hanging on the side of the baptistry. It was pretty
You're
wild.
very conscious of your hands.
Yes.
Do not drop this baby.
Don't drop this baby.
Well, I know that this is a softball tee up, but I've got a story for it. You ever put your foot in your mouth while preaching? Right? How many times that happened? Well, I was preaching somewhere, and I had this illustration that I was using in my sermons about just because somebody reads a lot about a subject doesn't mean that they can do what they've read, and you've got these people, like I could read for years about brain surgery, but you wouldn't be calling me to perform the brain surgery if you were the one needing it. Well, this was Bible class when I was giving this illustration, and so someone raised their hand. I said, would anybody here, let me perform brain surgery on you if you needed it. And I'd watched a lot of YouTube videos at it. So this guy raises his hand. And I was like, this guy has a death wish. He wants me
cool.
to,
Sounds good. I'll try it.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you watched a YouTube video.
Playing,
And I said, sir, and I called on him and he said, I would ask if you were Dr. Ben Carson. Now, I have since reminded myself, Dr. Carson is a political figure. However, in the moment, this was right around the time that Dr. Death was becoming a really big thing. Christopher Dunch.
Oh, okay.
He actually worked in Memphis for a time. Mm-hmm. According to the internet and according to the documentaries, he performed 38 surgeries and severely injured 33 of the 38 patients. Some of those people were repeat patients. Now, you try to sympathize with somebody who's dealing with that, but if the first surgery didn't go well, why would you go back to the same guy? Like, I would want somebody different.
Give him another chance, man.
No, man, that ain't no other chance to be given. Well, in that moment,
their brain's not working well.
Yeah, that's right. So in that moment, I got confused, and I said, he said, I would ask if you were Ben Carson. I said, oh yeah, Dr. Death, and I just kept going. Well, I knew by his face that I had said something wrong, but I couldn't just stop right then and look it up. So Bible class ends and I go over and sit down and I pull out my phone real quick and I type in Ben Carson, and I'm mortified when I see who Ben Carson is. And I just thought, I am so glad this was not live streamed today so no one knows I said that. And then I told my wife, and she said, you've got to put that on the Did That Really Happen show. So now everyone knows that I thought Dr. Carson was Dr. Death, but it wasn't. It was Christopher Dunch. I don't believe Dr. Carson injured 33 of 30 patients. Certainly will never make that mistake ever again. I will probably not know the answer to some trivia questions, but if someone ever said, who's Dr. Carson? I could be like, right here.
I know this guy.
I know this one from horrible experience. Matt, Wayne, you got anything you want to jump in with?
I've got one. I always try to find these little moments. It's harder when you're in charge of something, but when you're not in charge of it, you can find little moments to poke at something and just have some fun with it, you know? And so a lot of times when we'd be visiting a different congregation, I would try to find some humor in something that's going on. So me and my wife, Ashley, and our friend Jonathan walked into this congregation in Kentucky, Elizabethton, Church of Christ in Kentucky, or Elizabethtown, I think it is. Yeah. And they're pretty big, 400. They have just 2 aisles that go down, but they're forever. It's like a football field away from the pulpit. So when we walk in, they're like, people are saying, hey, filled out a visitor card yet? Filled out a visitor card so much that we just started making a joke of it because we'd been asked 20 times in the 5 minutes we were there, which is fine. That's better than what we do sometimes ignore people.
Yeah, right.
And I didn't care really, but it was just funny. So we sit down and we're filling out the visitor cards. And I told my friend Jonathan, I said, hey, for guest of, put Matt and Ashley. And he's like, oh, that's kind of funny. Because I'm thinking a deacon is going to see this afternoon and think this is funny. And then it said other. And I said, dude, you should request a song. And so he put see other side and he flipped it over and he wrote, please lead farther along. 'Tis my favorite. All right. So we go through the worship service, the sermon's preached, the invitation's offered, and they do the Lord's Supper and collection at the end. So the collection basket is coming and he says, oh, I just remembered, I've just started really kind of getting paid for a job for the first time. I want to contribute. So he runs out to the car and he gets his wallet. Well, when he's coming back in and sitting down, he's just missed it. So we wave down the guy and he brings the basket and he puts his money in and the guy starts to go. And I said, oh, put your card in. And he's like, oh, okay. And he like waves his card like to put the card in. And so the guy takes this waving as, hey, this is a special request. And so he's about 5 aisles up from us when he looks at it. And we just in slow motion see him go, woom, 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 flip to the other side and requests a song. So he goes up to the front while the preacher's making announcements at this 400 member congregation. And the pulpit's up a little. He's waving it. And the preacher's like, oh, well, okay, hold on. He gets it. And he's like, oh, well, I guess we're going to read this visitor card because I guess they don't ever do that. And he's like, all right, well, we've got Jonathan Cagle with us. All right. Guest of Matt and Ashley. Who's Matt and Ashley? I don't know. He's like, okay, well, we're glad they're here. And it says see other side. Oh, he's got a request. He wants to hear farther along. Well, John, do you know farther along? And John seemed like one of those guys who has the leather bound edition of the book, and he's had the set list picked out for weeks. And so a request wasn't good. So I know farther along, So he gets up and starts leading farther along because we've requested it. And my wife has got long hair. She's covering her face, laughing, crying. And in this very special, sacred moment of a great song, we can't help but be irreverent. We feel terrible. I'm like crying.
Yeah.
So I get out and go to the bathroom, which is out of the lobby. And as I'm gaining my composure, every time I start to walk out like I'm okay, they hit the chorus, farther along, and I'm just crying. So at the end, I walk out of the bathroom, Ashley and our friend walk out, and then there's somebody, a greeter, of course, with a card. Like, did you fill out a card? And we're like, trust me, we filled out your best card so far today. And my buddy is like, yeah, my name's Matt Wallin, that Jonathan Cagle guy. What a jerk, right? So anyway, we leave, and we're like, we go past restaurant after restaurant, and we stop at this Mexican restaurant that's like 15 minutes out of town. And we're like laughing and like can't believe ourselves and learned a lesson. And then in walks like half the congregation into this place, and they're just walking by us, looking at us with probably imagined disdain. So sometimes my wife will request somebody lead farther along, and then they're like, oh yeah, great song. And she's like, yeah, I got you. So I have learned from that. Don't try to make little jokes with a visitor's card. They may come back to bite you. Don't try to help a deacon who's counting the money with a little chuckle. Just move on.
And they say, hey, have you filled out a visitor card yet? Actually, no. Request. Would you please sing farther along again? I love that
Every
song.
person that asks me now, I'm going to just start filling out a card. I may not have any special requests, but I'm going to fill out a card for every person that asks me, I think. No,
Special request. If you're reading this, I've been kidnapped.
And we had 50 visitors today.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's all Wayne.
Oh man, that's great. Well, I know that visitors sometimes, they'll come in from nowhere. Well, I was preaching in a lectureship just recently, and I was asked to do a very pointed sermon on the overviewing the 7 churches of Asia, which is a pretty rough sermon to give because it kind of, we talked about it on Tuesday's episode about, evangelistic. It's a toe stomping sermon. I mean, because there's something for every congregation to think about that we're probably not doing like we should. And I was told basically, let it rip, just you preach it. And so I'm being as forceful without being mean and mean spirited. And this guy just comes in and he sits down and he like leans forward and he starts nodding his head very aggressively. And I'm like, yeah, this guy must have been helping finish and cleaning up the food we just ate. So he's must just be getting in here. And I was like, man, this guy and I, we're locked in. We're on it. We've got it. We're in sync. He gets it. He understands. This must be one of their most faithful members. And I got done. I offered the invitation like they asked. I'm singing the song, go to the back. And this guy, Dustin Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dustin gets up to close out the lectureship. And that guy starts to try to make his way to the front. And Dustin goes, no, we're going to pray and then I'll come and talk to you. So he wasn't a member. He just came in off the street, was looking for some help, but was nodding like so in sync with me. I was like, this guy gets it. This guy right here, we would be great friends. And he's got to be one of their strongest workers here. And I found out he wasn't even a member, but I thought, well, if he's sincere, he got it. Hopefully that conversation led to something good, but I just felt like, kind of an idiot when I found out he didn't even go here, and here I'm over here going, I'm going to focus in on this. How you do that as a preacher. You find somebody they're nodding a lot and you're like, I need to zero in on them. So here I am preaching to this guy that's not even a member of the church about how we need to stop arguing about the carpet colors and all that stuff. He's nodding his head and I'm like, this guy gets it. He totally understands. You've got anything else to add?
Not right now.
Okay.
But I reserve the right to change my mind.
That's right. We'll have to come back here. Adam, keep it warm, okay? Wayne, you got anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. I would add this, though. Probably one of the most difficult things for me as a preacher, I would say, is probably doing announcements.
No doubt.
I have probably messed up more announcements than I've ever messed up sermons. I know that for a fact. I mean, I've probably messed up some sermons, along the way, but announcements, that seems to be the worst.
Somebody hands you a name you don't know right at the last minute.
Or you just, you can't remember a name or, something that you're supposed to have gotten in. I don't know. It's just, it's always the worst. And for some reason, I must be the worst at it. But over and over, it has happened to me where I get up and I'm, starting to say something. Brother this good brother's wife.
Yeah, that guy right
you know,
there.
yeah.
Sir, tell us your name.
I can't,
Man,
it's
that
one of our
hurts.
elders,
That hurts.
I can't call his name.
My name's Wayne. Wayne.
Seriously. How do you miss that,
Yeah.
But I do it all the time. I don't know. It's,
Well, there was a place I was at recently. They were giving an announcement. And sometimes when you're doing announcements, I think we've all been here before, you're going to try to be funny as best you can. But that's a dangerous game to play. If you're not careful, you are really going to shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
Well, this particular announcement read that there were a lot of things left over in the Lost and Found. And in order to try to be funny, the person making the announcement said, either we have some little people here or these belong to some young children. And we don't have any little people here. There were some kids sitting in front of me, and there's a couple off to the side. And this one part of the couple, she's particularly shorter than those children would be used to seeing. And kids are just brutally honest. And those kids start grabbing their mom's, sleeve, tugging on it, and then they're pointing over, she's little. And I'm sitting behind them going, trying so hard to keep it together because we're about to have the Devo, and I'm just trying as best as I can to not lose my composure. But I just remember thinking, the guy making the announcements, he has no idea that that's even happening.
Yeah.
Because we're near the back when this happened, and they were quiet about it. They weren't being disrespectful. But I thought, man, I hope nobody else saw them going, it's right there.
Yeah.
Hey, over here.
That's the kind of thing you should have happen once because you learn from it. I've done that before
Yeah.
in a sermon. You're making an illustration. You make the extreme case. It's not like any of us have ever, but then someone has.
actually,
Or you might even say, or there's a value in every job, like a janitor. But really what you've just done is you've disparaged that job unintentionally.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which is a great, fine, and noble job. No
Yeah.
problem. If you can aspire to more, great. If you can't, that's a great job. But you know what I mean? So you do things like that sometimes and you just shake your head like, I was a jerk and I didn't even mean to be.
you make
I mean to sometimes, but I didn't mean
and
to.
you literally joke, I would be a janitor in the corner of heaven if somebody, if God
right.
would let me, thanks, man.
The guy I'm trying to study with is a janitor. Good.
Man,
Yes.
I cleaned the building. Thank you very much.
Right.
Your trash doesn't get taken out for a few weeks, Well, I think this is the last thing I've got. Books on our shelves as preachers can be a dangerous slope too, because you kind of have to have a wide variety of subjects and different things. You'll have books in there that are written by members of the church, books that are not written by members of the church. But there was a series of books that came out that I got for like $1 at some garage sale or whatever. Help, I've got ... And there's just, different titles. And the title that I had was, Help, I Got This Disease, basically. And I grabbed that because I thought, I've heard some horror stories of preachers being called into the office and told by somebody they've got that. This book may come in handy down the road and I don't even know it. Well, no sooner had I put it on my shelf, one of our deacons comes into my office and he just happens to be looking. He just sees that book perfectly. And he pulled it off the shelf, and we had a really good rapport. We're still really good he's probably listening to this. But he basically said, why do you have this book? And I said, oh, that's just in case. I thought, well, that's probably not the way you say that. I said, that's just in case anybody else comes and says that they're dealing with that. And he goes, still weird. And just put it back on the shelf.
Still weird.
And I've still got it somewhere in my office, but I've certainly done a better job of putting it not so much at eye level.
Yeah.
But that's something too, where people come in, like they'll borrow a book, and I would have to say, well, if you borrow that book, just be aware this and this is in there. So I bought a stamp when I was in preaching school because we were told that it would be a good thing to kind of do this. But I didn't kind of think about the wording of this. And so it really comes across like really mean, instead of just like, hey, be careful. There's some things in this book that aren't on the level with the gospel and the Bible. I put false doctrine, all caps, 45 exclamation marks, kind of, research purposes only, Michael J. Clark underneath that, which makes it sound like I'm the false teacher and I'm researching this because I'm trying to figure it out. So I have that stamped in some of my books. I forgot I had done this in a book by, what's the guy? He's famous author, used to be a member of the church, written so many different things.
Max Lucado.
Yes.
Mm.
So he did the book His Story, I think it was, where it was like his translation of the Bible, and it's really watered down. It's not great for a Bible. And I had taken that stamp and I had stamped all through it. Someone came in and, I love this book. They pulled it off the shelf and they opened it up right to a page that says, false doctrine, research purposes only. And they're like, oh. And they put it back on the shelf. I thought, I probably should hide that book now. Because I get why, you want to do that and all that, but you got to be careful.
Yeah.
Matt, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for being on. This is something that, it's a unique program on the Scattered Abroad Network. We only have one like it, and we're really glad you took the time to be with us. Matt, we'll put all your information in the show notes, everything that you do, we appreciate. We're praying for your work in the kingdom. You came out of your way to be here today. We know that wasn't necessarily in the schedule for what you had until we asked. So thank you for doing that. Wayne, you had to be here. So we're glad that you're here too.
It's all good.
Anything else you want to add before we throw this away?
No.
And not throw it away like we're not going to use it, but just...
We're done with this.
Yeah, we're done.
Yeah, that's it. Finished.
Throw it in the trash.
Hey, let's go on a possum hunt.
That's right. Yeah. I bet there's another one in here somewhere.
We're out of here.
I felt something tickling my leg. All right, guys. Thank you so much. And we'll be back next Tuesday for another episode of Through Their Eyes.